What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and welcome back to the Marvel Rivals Skin Lore series. It took me a while to get that intro right, where we cover the drip of characters from Marvel Rivals, or whatever word young people use in relation to dope outfits. So, we're doing Hawkeye, Hulk, and Iron Man in that order. And Hawkeye's suit from the comics is the free fall suit. Now, Marvel Rivals says that this suit debuted in the free fall storyline from Matthew Rosenberg, but that's not entirely true. Technically it did with the way that it looks, but the reality is it goes all the way back to the 2012 Hawkeye run from Matt Fraction. Now that was Matt Fraction taking a more updated take on the nature of Hawkeye, making him more interesting and cool, and he did. It was really, really cool. But Rosenberg's story was really fascinating, right? It dealt with like Parker Robbins' The Hood, and there was a new Ronin. I won't spoil who the new Ronin is in Marvel Comics at the time, but it's really, really fascinating stuff. But because it's ultimately rooted in the idea of just making Hawkeye look a little bit different and updating him for the modern reader, there really isn't a whole lot of lore to go on there. Now, Galactic Fangs and Tiger's Eye, those two skins are new for Marvel Rivals itself, so they don't really exist in the comics as far as I am aware. But that takes us into Hulk, and this is where we start getting into some real lore because stuff's fascinating. So of course, there's the traditional Hulk outfit. You guys don't need any lore for this, right? Bruce Banner gets hit with the gamma bomb, he turns into a giant green rage monster, and we just start getting a whole bunch of stories where he starts smashing stuff. But when you get into the Green Scar, that's where things get really, really cool. So most all of you guys out there have heard of Planet Hulk and World War Hulk. Of course, for those of you guys who haven't, in essence, the Illuminati, right, the hidden group behind the scenes in Marvel Comics, had come to the decision that the Incredible Hulk was simply just too unpredictable and too powerful to just be allowed to continue living on Earth. So, in an effort to protect the world from the Incredible Hulk, they tricked him onto a spaceship, and then initially he was supposed to be sent off to a planet that was peaceful, and there would be nothing on it but him. Such as it was, he was sucked into a gravity well, which was basically a wormhole, and ended up on a planet called Sakaar. This led to him becoming a kind of revolutionary, if we're being honest with ourselves, helping the Sakaaran citizens to overthrow the Red King, who ruled the planet with an iron fist, and had actually risen to power in a pretty nefarious way, right? By kind of basically sending out a kind of alien race that was considered to be a plague among the planet, and then quote unquote, suddenly showing up with a cure, the ability to help everybody and fight off the threat. So it was pretty nefarious, albeit relatively intelligent at the time. But during all of this, the Incredible Hulk initially arrived on Planet Hulk as a gladiator and participated in the gladiatorial games. But as time went on and his reputation rose, the people of Sakaar started to view him as the prophesized being that would free them from their captivity, the Green Scar. And so as a result of that, he ultimately took the name on. Now from Planet Hulk, you ended up going into World War Hulk. And the way that World War Hulk happened and the way the two of them connected with each other was that when the Incredible Hulk was sent to Sakaar in the first place, he was sent on a nuclear-powered ship. The nuclear-powered ship was tampered with. So by the time the end of Planet Hulk happens, and he marries Kyra, and she's getting ready to have a kid, which it actually turned out she had two, Scar, as well as Hero Kala. Hero Kala, of course, being the more powerful of the two. All this is covered in our Incredible Hulk playlist, by the way. You need to watch it. You're going to love it. It's phenomenal. Then ultimately the ship was tampered with and the ship detonated, and it killed seemingly everybody that the Incredible Hulk cared about, with the exception of his Warbound, but it also included Kyra and what seemed to be their unborn child. So the Incredible Hulk shows up on Earth, mad as hell, and takes it to pretty much the Illuminati in their entirety. It really comes down to a fight between the Sentry and the Hulk before everything starts to calm down. Now, one of the big questions a lot of people have, and the reason why you see Bruce Banner with the Green Scar outfit in this particular skin, is because during World War Hulk number 3, I believe it was number 3, that Doctor Strange had actually spoke to Bruce Banner to find out if there was a way to get Bruce Banner to bring the Incredible Hulk down. But you end up learning that Banner actually agrees with everything the Hulk is doing, because the Hulk had introduced Kyra to Banner himself. So while the Incredible Hulk, quote unquote, was technically married to Kyra and they were starting a family, Bruce Banner was by extension. And so for the first time in his life outside of Betty Ross, Bruce Banner felt love, and then it was taken from him, right? So he agreed with everything the Hulk was doing. And it was really, really fascinating to see that happen in the comics. Now that takes us into the Mighty G-Bomb. The Mighty G-Bomb, the reason why it's called that instead of Joe Fixit is that it is Grey Hulk, but it's Grey Hulk before he became Joe Fixit. So this lore is as much a part of the Incredible Hulk comics and the in-universe mythos as it is the Marvel publishing side. And the reason why I say that is because when it comes to the Incredible Hulk, when he was initially published, as most of you guys know, he was gray. But due to any number of factors, inks and all kinds of stuff, they had to change him to green. The result was that initially, Marvel never bothered to explain why the Hulk was gray and then suddenly became green. But all that changed with the Incredible Hulk number 347 by Peter David. And this introduced us to the character of Joe Fixit for the very first time. Now, Joe Fixit, as he was introduced, was kind of a way for Marvel to bookend the original Grey Hulk with the version that you saw with Fixit. And all they said was that when Bruce Banner first became the Incredible Hulk, he actually turned into Joe Fixit, but that ultimately Banner ended up turning into the Green Savage Hulk the next time he transformed, and he had just basically been Green Savage Hulk ever since. Eventually, when Joe Fixit makes his debut, we end up learning he's a wholly different personality from the Savage Green Hulk, and he's been a kind of on-again, off-again part of the Hulk mythos ever since. You don't really see him all that often. And when you do, he's usually just some kind of like a bouncer in Las Vegas or something like that. Quite literally, right? He like appeared as a bouncer in Vegas wearing a suit the whole 9 yards. But again, Joe Fixit's kind of cool, nowhere near as strong as Savage Hulk, but he is more intelligent and more capable. But that's just something to keep in mind when you look at this skin. It's not Joe Fixit Hulk, it's just the original Grey Hulk when he first appeared in the Incredible Hulk #1 in Marvel Comics. But that takes us into Iron Man. Now, here's the funny thing about this, right? Marvel Rivals refers to the Avengers Endgame suit as the Avengers Endgame suit. But if we really want to get a little deep into the lore here, even the Avengers Endgame suit was not original. That suit was actually inspired by 2 other suits in Marvel Comics. The first was the Model 37 Bleeding Edge suit, and the second was the Model 51 Model Prime suit. Now, the Model 37 originally appeared during Matt Fraction's run on Iron Man, which started with a story called The Five Nightmares, and his run was incredible. The only run that I think was better than that was Kieran Gillen's run, which started with the secret origin of Tony Stark. That introduces like Arno and all that kind of stuff. We have a playlist for that one as well, right? We've covered so much stuff in the 10+ years that we've been running this YouTube channel. But the Model Prime debuted in Brian Michael Bendis's all new, all different Iron Man run. And while I won't go over every single capability that these 2 suits have, because the reality is they share a lot of similarities, these are the highlights. And so these suits are based off the Extremis tech that Tony Stark developed. And the Extremis tech was kind of revolutionary when Tony Stark built it, because instead of having to like put on a physical suit, the Extremis tech was a way for Tony Stark to incorporate the suit via nanotechnology that it actually stored in the hollow bones of his body. So he could recall the suit at any point in time. Now, because of the nature of Extremis tech and that it was quote unquote primitive, if there is such a thing in the world of Tony Stark, that you actually had these little kind of holes along Tony Stark's body where the suit would come out. By the time you got to the Model 37 and the Model 51, the nanobots that composed the suit were so incredibly small, they could actually fit through the pores of Tony Stark's own body. So the first thing you had here was, again, nanotechnology integration, that the suit stored within his body, it could be deployed and then put away instantaneously and could reconfigure into weapons, tools, and any kind of equipment that Tony Stark needed. It also had your normal fair share of repulsor weaponry, right? Advanced-based energy weapons, things like that, palm blast, omnidirectional energy bursts, cutting beams, but it also gave him superhuman strength and durability. And while I wouldn't say that those would allow him to go toe-to-toe with the Incredible Hulk on a bad day, if the Incredible Hulk decided to arm wrestle Tony Stark, he might stand a pretty decent chance, depending on whether or not the Incredible Hulk wants to let him win or not. There's also energy manipulation, which was a relatively new feature between both these 2 suits, that the suit was capable of absorbing and redirecting energy for offensive or defensive purposes. So it was really a kind of power that was borrowed from the X-Man Bishop and incorporated into the suit. There was environmental adaptability, meaning that it was fully sealed or could be fully sealed for space exploration, underwater exploration, hazardous environments of virtually any kind. so long as the pressure did not exceed whatever the suit could withstand. There was advanced mobility, right? So it was designed for agility, high-speed flight, precision thrusters, things like that. That was predicated on previous issues that Tony Stark had with more rigid Iron Man suits, where he couldn't maneuver as much as he would need to in order to bob and weave against either multiple enemies or highly versatile enemies in the comics. There was also AI integration as well as advanced sensor systems. So basically, he had his AI system built into it, but then the targeting systems, real-world environmental analysis, those were all incorporated into the suits. It could self-repair almost instantaneously and in real time so that Tony Stark wouldn't have to retreat, fix his suit, and then go back out. He could literally fix it as the fight was going on and even remove parts of the suit that simply just weren't functioning the way he needed them to. There were, of course, stealth capabilities, right? Cloaking and energy masking so people couldn't pick him up, or he could dodge and evade as he needed. And then again, based on the extremis tech, it could integrate into his system. But from there, you go into the next skin that Marvel has in Marvel Rivals, which they refer to as the symbiote suit, which is the Model 50, aka the Endosim suit. This first appeared in Superior Iron Man. And I don't care what anybody says, while this is not the most powerful suit that Iron Man has ever made, it's certainly the best looking, man, because the Superior Iron Man suit, when that suit debuted in the comics, as the fan base, we were just like, bro, this is amazing. Now, I will go over what the suit can do in the first place, but let's talk about how the suit came about, because this suit was invented because Tony Stark was being a dick. So the idea behind this is in Marvel Comics, there was a story called Axis, and Axis was a story where the moral compass of the heroes and villains were inverted. So all the good guys became bad guys and all the bad guys became good guys. I don't know that we actually covered Axis here on the channel, and if we didn't, we should, because Axis was really, really fun. I want to say either it came in the aftermath of Avengers vs. X-Men or led up to Avengers vs. X-Men, but I think it was in the aftermath. That leads directly into Superior Iron Man, and the Superior Iron Man ends and then goes into Hickman's Avengers and New Avengers, which goes into Secret Wars 2015. But the idea behind this was that while the spell that was cast to invert the different heroes and villains was undone, Tony Stark actually blocked himself from being reverted back into being a superhero because he enjoyed the fact that he just didn't have to care about anybody other than himself. That when he was inverted and wasn't really a villain so much as just a jerk, to be honest, all that really mattered was just enjoying and living life. And so when he stayed his normal self, using extremis tech, he developed an app in the city of San Francisco that would allow everybody in the city to experience a perfect life. Everybody was beautiful and all that kind of stuff because extremis tech allows for the altering of human biology, if only through surface level appearance. And so once that day was over, he started charging everybody in San Francisco $99 a day to use the app. And like that city descended into madness. People were like robbing everybody. They were stealing from people. I mean, they were just like doing whatever they could to pay that 99 bucks to look beautiful for a day. And Tony Stark did not care that he had sent an entire city descending into madness. There's a point where like Daredevil shows up and like Iron Man's like, just to show you what I can do, he gives Matt Murdock his eyesight back and then takes it away just to be a dick. I mean, there was a bigger reason behind why he did it, but like, it's a pretty crappy thing to do. It was an amazing story. Superior Iron Man was phenomenal in Marvel Comics. But getting into what it is that the suit can do, the coolest thing about the Endosim suit is that it was actually modeled after the nature of symbiotes themselves, Venom, Carnage, people like that. And so that's why it has a kind of symbiote composition, that it's made of liquid smart metal with biological components, and it's directly connected to Iron Man's nervous system as opposed to just being a part of his hollow bones. And it allows for incredibly intuitive control. Now, because it's built on the bleeding edge tech combined with extremis, that essentially it can do everything that the other suits can do and a little bit more. And in fact, the Model 51 was based on this Endosim suit. So it kind of resides in between the other two suits that we just talked about here. So it has instant deployment, meaning just like the other two suits, that Tony Stark can deploy the suit, whether from himself or a small device that he can carry around with him, that it repairs itself in real time during combat, that it does have advanced energy manipulation beyond what the Mark 37 Bleeding Edge was capable of. So of course you have your enhanced repulsors for, blasts and things like that, but it also is more efficient in the energy that it uses, to where the energy source will never run out so long as the arc reactor in Tony Stark's chest is not disrupted or destroyed. So effectively, infinite energy forever. So there's also the idea that the suit can give him advanced strength, making him stronger and more capable, but there's also the advanced shape-shifting abilities. This came with the Model 37, but the Endosim is more advanced, and so because the suit is liquid in nature, it can literally turn Tony Stark or change his appearance any way he wants to. He can look like anybody that he wants to, his suit can change into clothes, so he never actually has to change out of his Iron Man suit, with the exception of taking a shower, which hopefully he does. The suit itself is resistant to hacking due to its biological components. So unlike every other suit that came before, where someone like Justin Hammer or the events of Armor Wars could unfold where they could steal his suit technology or hack into the suit itself, that cannot be done here. Of course, there's also enhanced stealth capabilities that are more advanced than the ones that we saw in the Model 37. There's enhanced neurological feedback, meaning that the suit functions as an extension of Tony Stark's body with real-time sensory and motor response. So whatever he thinks, the suit will respond instantaneously in the same way that you move your arms, your legs, your head, the whole 9 yards. Of course, there is a customizable arsenal, meaning that it's a little more customizable than what the Mark 37 did, but it's not that much more advanced than the Mark 37. It's exceedingly lightweight, energy efficient, and highly agile in air. So it makes Tony Stark incredibly difficult to hit. And in fact, depending on the context, he's every bit as agile as Spider-Man is under certain circumstances. And because we have some more time here, let's toss in another person. Let's talk about Storm, because Storm is one of the few characters in Marvel Rivals whose skins up to this point in the game are not designed exclusively for Marvel Rivals, but wholly take their influence from Marvel Comics. So Mohawk Rock, as most of you guys can guess, is an adaptation of the Mohawk version of Storm from Marvel, which debuted in Uncanny X-Men 173. Now, the mythos behind this is actually really fascinating, and it all goes back to a girl named Yukio. So one of the things to know is that in Uncanny X-Men issues 171, 72, and 73, this was all part of an existing story arc that involved Mariko and the clan Yoshida, the death of Shinjin, all that kind of stuff. And the long and short, kind of the highlights here with all of this, is Clan Yoshida was at one point just a clan that existed, right? An organization within Japan. When Shinjin took over it, he transformed it from a clan into the largest criminal empire in Japan that basically brought in more money than anybody could ever imagine. Eventually, Shinjin is killed, and his daughter Mariko, who at that point was the love interest of Wolverine, becomes the leader of Clan Yoshida. But because Wolverine was also associated with the X-Men, when the villains Viper and Silver Samurai start making a play to try to take over the Clan Yoshida from Mariko herself, Wolverine and the X-Men intervene. Now, Yukio is this kind of exceedingly free-spirited person in Marvel at this point in time. And because her and Storm became friends, Storm was inspired by the free-spirited nature of Yukio, and that's why Storm totally changed her outfit and then gave herself a mohawk to symbolize the fact that she was kind of moving in to a new era of her life. Now, on the publishing side of Marvel, Chris Claremont and Paul Smith did this because they just wanted to make Storm different. They wanted to bring her in as kind of a reflection of the rising popularity of like the British invasion and like the rock era of the 1980s, hair bands and all that kind of stuff. And it worked. Storm looked dope with a mohawk. To this day, it's still my favorite version of her character. I love Hard Rock Storm. She is awesome. But then, of course, there is Ivory Breeze Storm. Now, Marvel Rivals says that this version of Storm debuted in X-Men #1, but that's kind of a misnomer. It's actually X-Men Volume 2, Issue #1, and that's an important distinction because the reality, if you go and look up X-Men #1, you're gonna find the old Stan Lee, Jack Kirby stories, and you're gonna be like, where's Storm? I don't see Storm anywhere. And the art here looks nothing like what I would expect. So yes, the original X-Men comic was written by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. That ended when the comic was at like 63 or something like that. And then Marvel replaced it with Uncanny X-Men. So in 1991, when X-Men comes back, it's the second volume of the entire X-Men run, X-Men Volume 2. And what had happened here is that with Chris Claremont basically on his way out the door and artist Jim Lee preparing to take over as the writer of the comic as well as staying on as artist, Storm, alongside pretty much all the other X-Men, were just kind of taken back to their original design and then updated with Jim Lee's art style. You also saw like the original X-Factor and X-Men teams merge, so that's why with X-Men Volume 2, you get X-Men Gold and X-Men Blue, that kind of thing. If you don't know what that means and it sounds complicated, don't worry about it. It's not overly necessary here. The important thing is that a lot of the cosmetic changes for Storm's character under Chris Claremont's run were essentially undone, and she was taken back to more of her classic look. This time, of course, she had the white outfit. Now, this was a massive inspiration for Storm as she was depicted in X-Men the Animated Series, but it is during X-Men Volume 2, issue number 1, when this first originally appears in Marvel Comics. But with that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this to an end. Let me know any other characters that you want me to cover. Do you want me to cover the lore about Iron Fist? You know what? I'm not gonna do Iron Fist until Marvel Rivals patches him. No, I'll cover Iron Fist if you guys are interested, but make sure you leave some comments down below. Make sure you drop a like if you enjoyed this video, and I will catch you all later. Peace.